بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا وطبيبنا وشفيعنا وقرة أعيننا وإمامنا وقدوتنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله الأطهار وعلى أصحابه الأخيار ومن والاهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منه وفيهم يا أرحم الراحمين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. لا حول ولا قوة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's a Mawlid, so we're alhamdulillah, we're happy and it's very beautiful, and Allah bless the brothers from Hamim and everyone that helped to put all of this together. Alhamdulillah, and Sidi Faisal and everybody, alhamdulillah. It's a great joy, and you have to kind of look outside and you think that you live in a non-Muslim country. You live in a land very distant from the lands of the Muslims, in the heart actually, really, of the non-Muslim world or the Western world, and yet there's a Mawlid of the Prophet ﷺ. If that isn't a miracle, I really don't know what is. I mean, if you said to the predecessors that there will be Muslims that will be gathered in the capital of the Western world, really, if you think about it, London, especially in its imperial height, and they will be praising the Prophet ﷺ. If this isn't 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗀𝗿𝗄 𝗖ście when Allah said to the Prophet that when I mention, you'll be mentioned with me, then what is? And this is 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗹, glad tidings to the believers that Allah allowed us on this evening, despite anywhere where anyone could have been, and we're here gathered remembering the Prophet ﷺ, which is a shifa, because the Prophet is a Quran. When 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂 radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, described him as فَكَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, 𝗨 𝗟𝗲𝗴 rahimahullah, the great Imam, he said, فَكَانَ الْقُرْآنُ بَيَانَ خُلُقِهِ. He says the Quran is one big ode and na'at and qasida in praise of the Prophet ﷺ, because everything that the Quran talks about, the Prophet ﷺ showed us practically. And so when we read the Quran, it's an ode about the Prophet ﷺ. And so the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us a part of this family to be praising Him, it's a shifa lima fi sudur, because the Quran is a shifa for what's in our hearts, what's in our chests. And so anyone that came here today with something difficult in their life, anyone that came here with some hardship, with some unpaid bills, with some relationship problems, with some children that are not listening to them, with some difficult relationships at work, with whatever it may be that's helping your hair grey even further, whatever it may be that's creating some discomfort in your life, you came to a mustashfa, and you came to a hospital, and you came to a place where the tabib, the doctor, is Sayyid al-Kawnayn, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's one of the things that I observed in my teachers, is that they were people of absolute sakina and tranquility, and you don't understand why. Why is it that the world is falling apart and you're okay? We're in a fire and you're okay. When Sayyidina Khalil, this is not the topic of my talk, by the way, when Sayyidina Khalil alayhi salam was thrown into the fire and he comes out and they asked him, Ya Ibrahim, O Prophet Abraham, you were flung into a fire, how is it? He said, they were the best days of my life. And what did he say? They were the best days of my life. Because Allah said to the fire, be what? Baldan salama. Become peacefully cool for my Abraham. Meaning what? Allah is the active agent in any given effect in creation. And you don't do anything, I don't do anything. Hey, what's Tawheed? What's this magnificent thing that the Prophet came? It's Tawheed. Allah is in control of every given situation. So when you come to a place like this, you leave all of those things at the door. And you come in like beggars before Allah Azza wa Jal, and you take that wasila, you take that beloved, and you say, Ya Allah, for the sake of Him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ease my difficulties, make easy my affairs. And this is why the Sahaba would enter into the presence of the Prophet, and all of their worries would go away. All of them, every single one would go away. Why? What would get the Sahaba out in the middle of the night? Why did you get out, Ya Abu Bakr, Ya Umar, in the famous hadith? Just to look at you, Ya Rasulullah. Because it was a shifa. It was a shifa. And anyone that's been honored to be in the presence of awliya, of great people, would know something of what that feels like. To become a child again. When you're with your mashayikh, the awliya, salihin, I'm talking haqiqiyin, those real rijalullah, you become like a child in their lap. You feel at home. You feel comfortable again. Why? Because you're in the presence of angelic beings. And this is the beauty. And when we come into a place like this, don't belittle it. Don't make it something small. Honestly, do not make it something small. But understand the magnitude, especially in the time that we live in. And this is why it's so important for us, and this really is my topic. This is why it's important for us to reconnect with that sunnah. Sounds cliche, right? I want you to give me your attention for a little while if that's okay. It sounds cliche, oh, preserve the sunnah in the age, very cliche, great. No. Really think about this. One of the halaqas I did for Hameen, we talked about finding the sacred in a secular age. That's basically the same thing. I can't remember a lot of the details about what I spoke about that day, but that's exactly what it is. But the problem that we have is that in many instances, we don't really know why we're in a problem. People can't put a finger on it. They kind of sat there thinking to themselves, okay, we know that there's this problem. Alright, maybe it's because we're the war on terror generation as Muslims, and so we're struggling, there's a trauma. What is it? Can't put a finger on it. Why is it that in the back of our minds, there's always this thing which is begging, this kind of antagonism between us and our environment? We have to understand, and the world around us, our non-Muslim neighbors, friends, need to understand that this world, the modern world, particularly the Western world, has developed its ideas, has evolved through a process of evolution of ideas, of thinking, has had reformation after reformation, revolution after revolution, to get to a particular understanding. And that is our postmodern world. It's a secular, liberal world which does not want Allah or sacredness or laws or morals to be dictated by other than the human himself. Right? But when they look at a Muslim and they say, why can't you get with that? Why can't you just assimilate as Muslims? Why are you so difficult when it comes to, why are you panicking when the LGBT community turn up to your school? Why are you panicking? Why are you panicking about discussions around homosexuality? Why? Why are you panicking about gender? Why are you so staunch as Muslims? Why can't you get with the times? Why can't you march with the pride? Why can't you do any of, what is wrong with you? And you know, as Muslims, we have to just look people in the face and say, the entire journey that you went on as a people to get to this stage, we did not join you on that journey. The fruits of this particular world have been born of a tree that has been planted and watered generation after generation, war after war, and a real strong process of evolution has happened in their thinking. The Muslim world never had that. So for you to now take this paradigm, which has again grown organically, and try to implant it into Muslims, and then you wonder why the Muslims are reacting. You wonder why and the problem with us as Muslims is because we've suffered, and those of you that are old enough, maybe those of you that are young enough, maybe perhaps the elders have taken enough beats for you to not really have to feel the pain so much, but certainly people old enough, especially post 9/11, this community has suffered so much pressure, really. Sorry this is going to come out like this, it's just something I think about quite a lot. Because this pressure has been building up and building up and building up, where every time a Muslim goes on to some kind of show, he's got to be worried about the questions he's going to be asked. Straight away, what do you say about apostasy? What do you say about homosexuality? What do you say about kida wa kida wa kida wa kida? And they've got to a point where the pressure, because I don't want to sound like some kind of extremist, I don't want to bring some bad name to my community, I don't want to do extra, I'm not like these people, I'm not like that, and we become apologetic, and we become weak. And the moment you are vulnerable in that situation, you begin to give in. And you just don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. Please, just stop bullying me. I'll say what you want me to say, please. Fine, it's fine, we'll just do it. We'll all sing along, just leave us alone. It's quite interesting if you think about it. Whereas, Muslims that are thinking beings, and I say this to my young brothers particularly, thinking beings, Muslims that have grown up intelligent, and Muslims that are educated and smart, and Muslims that think for themselves, and do not allow their thinking to be dictated to by anyone or anything, are people that look at that and say, actually, no, I do not accept that my morality comes from myself, but I recognize that my morality comes from a divine source. 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝘀 𝗖ście 𝗲𝗲𝗃. That has been our principle of Ahl Sunnah, the Sunni Muslims, for the last 1,000 years. Good and evil are dictated to by the sacred law. In the early part of Islam, you had an interesting group of Muslims called the 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗃. They were a very famous kind of progressive, kind of philosophical movement in Islam, and they pushed this idea of al-husn wal-qubh aqdiyan, that good and evil are known through the intellect, not the Sharia. In fact, you need to square the Quran and Sunnah to your intellect. And so we had an entire systematic development of Islamic Sunni theology to eradicate this fitna. And time again, Allah sent great people to do that. Whether it was the likes of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi in the early period, many great Imams of al-Hujjatul Islam, Abu Hamid, Muhammad bin Muhammad al-Ghazali al-Tusi, with the likes of Avicenna and Ibn Sina. Time again, whenever these type of philosophical inquisitions attempted to hijack the moral or the methodology of understanding what it meant to be a Muslim, there were always these defenders that Allah sent to help the Muslims from this intellectual hijacking. Now we're in that similar sort of situation again. And I'll try to wrap up here. But we're in exactly that same situation now. And this is why you'll see things like, I mean, just like yesterday, a man that my brother works with is confused about hadith. Oh, is hadith even a thing? Do we need the sunnah? What are you going to do with the Quran without the sunnah? Really? I mean, it shocks me that if you deny the hadith of the Prophet and you pray 4 rak'ah for dhuhr, where did you get the 4 rak'ah from? Where did you get that from? You start denying sunnah, you've denied Islam in and of itself. It's a fundamental aspect of our deen, is the sunnah of the Prophet. So preserving it is preserving the very essence of our deen. And you have people that will then, we begin small. Let's attack Sahih Bukhari. Let's attack this book. Let's do this. Let's build up. In the history of Islam, the schools of Islam have differed on how they engage with Sunnah. The Hanafi school differs with the Shafi'is in how they engage with Sunnah. This is absolutely clear, known, and this is maneuverability is absolutely there. Likewise, the Malikis have a different understanding. They will look towards the fuqaha of Medina. They will look to the practice of Medina. They all have their own ways, but all of them have their ways of looking at the Sunnah. None of them deny the Sunnah. And so people would say, but we don't know about the Sunnah because there's no ijma. How can you deny the fact that the Ummah has practiced something for generation after generation? You take these same people that deny consensus, the idea that all the Muslims can agree on something, and you ask them if Plato existed. They love Plato. They love Aristotle. Of course he existed. How can you deny Aristotle existed when thousands, millions of people have been talking about him throughout the generations? Habibi, how can you deny hadith? How can you deny hadith? Aristotle and Plato had students, not like 124,000 companions. Absolutely not. Who waited on every single word that came out of the Prophet's mouth. You know how they would narrate hadith? Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir, رَأَيْتُ حَبِيبِي Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he would report. Did you know that? رَأَيْتُ حَبِيبِي, I saw my beloved. Every word, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. People, you know how long Abu Hurairah spent studying with the Prophet? One of the greatest reporters of narrations from the Prophet. You may think 20 years, 30 years, a lifetime, 2 years, ahbabi. He spent actually in the Suhbah. Other years he spent as a Qadi in Yemen, etc. 2 years he spends with the Prophet. And he becomes the greatest muhaddith in this ummah. Along with the likes of Sayyidatuna Aisha, radiallahu anha, Anas ibn Malik, etc. Abu Hurairah, 2 years. What does that mean? Every moment they were there. Whatever the Prophet said, they recorded it. And they were people that understood, بَلِّغُ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Take on from me and preach from me, even if it's a single verse. They understood what this meant. And they preserved this. Every sunnah. Look at the Shama'il. It's the Mawlid season. Many people have been reciting the Shama'il. The way his eyebrows were, the way his beard was, the way his eyes were, the way his face was, the hair on his chest, the hair on his stomach, the hair on his back, every little detail, his height, the way he walked, the way he talked, his teeth, everything they preserved. And you're going to deny it in the 21st century? No, because this paradigm of uprooting all of what was known to be tradition and culture is not an Islamic principle. We reject it. We are people of heritage. We are people of transmission. We are people that love the ancestors. We are people that love the wisdoms transmitted from before. I'll give you an interesting task to do. You go and find two good writers. One's called Edmund Burke and the other one called Thomas Paine. Those of you that are interested in this type of stuff should read it. In the period of the French Revolution, where the world was attempting to kick out all of tradition, everything that was known from before, and to try and attempt to do something new, was a time that you had this antagonism between some people saying, no, we're not going to accept that, and some people saying, we need to do that. For us as Muslims to read those writers now is very important. Why? Because when we read those writers, we can see very, very clearly, at that point that there has been a systematic attempt to try and take that out of our system. Now, that's like from the perspective of non-Muslim, a non-Muslim Western framework of a certain framework which has attempted to live its own life like that. Get away from monarchy, bring about democracy, get away from old economic systems, bring in new capitalist systems. How does that affect us? Beyond the point that we live in that environment is within the Muslim community now. You have those same progressive ideas. Those same ideas. Where you will see people that will say things along the lines of, well, the Quran doesn't say this, therefore. What does the Prophet say about it? What did Allah tell us to do with regards to the Prophet? Did He not say obey the Prophet? Did He not say لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ? Did Allah say that? You will find within the Messenger of God the best example. What example? Was that verse only for the companions and not for anybody else after that? Where does the Prophet fit into all of this? Why we want to reject the Sunnah? And this is something, an interesting word that people should think about and really reflect on this, is theophobia. And this is a people that believe in God, but they really don't want to. They're people that believe in God because their mind cannot get away from it. لا يتصور العقل عدم وجود الإله. Their intellects cannot conceive of the non-existence of wajib al-wujud, of that necessarily existent being. Jalla fil ula, they cannot do it, but they wish He didn't exist. They wish He did not exist. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ. We seek Allah's protection from such an ill fate. But the believers, الْحُسْنُ وَالْقُبْحُ شَرْعِيًّا. Whatever we believe to be right and wrong comes to us from revelation. It comes from the book of Allah and from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Let nobody be unclear about this. My dear brothers and sisters, whatever you know to be good and bad will come from Allah and His Messenger and not from any other source. It may be known through the intellect, but never dictated by the intellect, regardless of what setup you live in, where you live, what time you live. So preserving the Sunnah is absolutely fundamental, because it is preserving our very moral compass and moral framework. And I'll conclude with this. I mentioned this on the Mawlid in 𝗿𝗲𝗰𝘁 𝗖ście. I thought I'd throw that in there, right? That's placing my birth. 𝗿𝗲𝗰𝘁 𝗖ście. That something that Sayyidi Habib Umar mentioned that it really affected me a lot. And in my mind, not practically. Allah give us tawfiq to be affected practically. But that he mentioned about the hawd of the Prophet ﷺ, and it really got. And he said that the hawd that we want to drink from in the hereafter, he said He gave us that hawd in this world. The hawd of the Prophet is given to us in this dunya, and that is his sunnah. It is his manhaj. And he told us to drink from it. He said, drink from it. So people think, I won't drink from the sunnah of the Prophet now, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to drink from it. Suhkan! He will say to people on that day, you know that? They're going to go and he's going to call them because he's Rahmat lil Alameen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And he's going to say, come. And the angel will say, don't call these people, you don't know what they did after you. And then the Prophet will tell them to go away. Nasallallahu al-afiyah. We ask Allah for protection from such an ill fate. So Habib said, drink from that hawd now. What about his sunnah? And this is where, as Muslims, sometimes we go so far that we have to rewind and go back to basics. Because if we are worried about the state, our state and our children and our environment as Muslims, but we forget to pray our sunnahs with salah, and we forget to send salawat upon the Prophet morning and evening, that we forget the ad'iyah, ma'thura, we forget those du'as that he gave us to protect us from that fitnah. If we forget to make those, there's somebody sent me a message of Sayyidina Shaykh 𝗿𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗂𝗿𝗄 rahimahullah, where he said, where are those people that say, I forgot my wird today, my prayer litany, I'm going to make qada for it tomorrow? And where is that consistency with the sunnah? One of the things that you will see in our elders, rahimahumullah, even if they were not knowledgeable, their iman was very strong. And when people talk about their grandparents, what do they usually say? They never forgot to read Quran every morning. Don't they say that? They never forgot to read Quran. When the adhan would go, they would get up. There was no concept of ta'khir. There was no concept of a lot of time. There was no concept. There was no concept of missing your sunnahs. We've still got grandparents that will tell you off for missing your nafil. You have to read your nafil, and because we're so smart and so intelligent, and we can distinguish between the two, did the Sahaba distinguish between these things? If they heard the Prophet did something, do you reckon they distinguish between it? Yeah, of course. We begin on our own stages, and we grow and we develop, just as you would if you went to the gym. Absolutely. But nevertheless, we shouldn't lull ourselves to sleep. Where's the sunnah? So honestly, people say, what's the big philosophies that we need to protect ourselves in this age? We need Quran. We don't need, the philosophy will come, Allah will send that. Do you think we produced Ghazali? Allah sent Ghazali. Did we produce Taftazani? Allah sent Taftazani. Did we produce them? No, we didn't. Allah is Khaliq. He's Mujid. He's the one that will create all of that. What is our duty? Our duty is qira'atul Quran. Our duty is knowing the Sunnah. Our duty is establishing a relationship with the Misbah. Our duty is making sure we never miss our Sunnahs. Our duty is that we send salawat on the Prophet. Our duty is that we drink water sitting down. Our duty is that we read the du'as in the morning, the du'as in the evening. Our duty is exactly that and nothing more. If we could re-establish those things in our lives, marhaba. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The jungle of khair.
I'm very sorry for you. No, marhaba. This is a timely point for me to finish. So if I could just summarize, and forgive me for overstepping my time, I don't know actually how long I've been going on, but for sure I think I've come to an end. Is that when we talk about preserving the Sunnah, it's about preserving the idea of the Sunnah, preserving the role of the Prophet in that, in a time that does not want to have any of that, and making sure that those Sunnah are alive in our lives, and recognizing the fact that it doesn't matter, our environment does not want our morality as Muslims. Our morality comes only from our Prophet, and we are not willing to accept it from anywhere else. And alhamdulillah, it is in this time that Allah has re-given us our confidence as Muslims. We have re-found a voice after all of these generations of being put under pressure to say, actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give in to that anymore. I'm really sorry, I can't accept that anymore. Because my Prophet comes first. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Because our love for Allah and His Messenger is more severe than any of the pressures that you put us under. And I said, people think that this is big sunnah. Forget the big, leave the big sunnah to the big people. We have to introduce all of the small ones, to make sure that our intellects have not made us too smart for praying our sunnahs and drinking water with 3 sips and reading Quran every single day and making our awrad. If those if the mu'awwadatayn and the ta'awwadat and the protections were in our lives, we will never face any of these fitnas that we face. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us our awrad and keep us da'in qa'im upon them. Say ameen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a wird of Quran every single day, even if it's a verse or if it's a juz or whatever, bihasbi taqa, whatever we can. Allah give us a wird every day of salawat ala nabi sallallahu, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us so firm on that it makes us weep if we forgot it, that it makes us cry if we missed it, that we would miss anything else but we will not miss our litanies, because they will be our fortresses. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq of understanding and amal. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.